Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar on NAFEMS Training for the Americas. My name is Tony Abbey and I am the NAFEMS Training Manager. The first question we want to ask is, how does NAFEMS Training fit in to the general requirement for an engineer to gain experience and to move into the area of simulation? Look at the typical background, the training that an engineer might have had, probably gone through university, developing skill sets in terms of theoretical knowledge of a lot of the disciplines that we're going to need as engineers. So for example, good understanding of physics and mathematics, a first introduction to these topics, and then kind of more in-depth kind of assessment. These days a lot of project work goes on at university using software. So for example, a lot of students now do final year projects, quite significant projects, using FEA analysis. Then we also have available vendor-based training. So all of the software vendors will want to teach people how to use their products effectively and productively. Basically the idea here is to get to grips with that particular piece of software. They all have their own idiosyncrasies, how to actually work with the user interface, how to set up the different stages of the process, so pre-processing, run the analysis, post-processing, and so on. There's a lot to learn there to get really skillful and productive in the use of that particular tool. So where NAFEMS fits in is to try and broaden this background that people will have. They've almost certainly been through some kind of university education. So now NAFEMS' role is to say, let's take the university graduates, maybe with some knowledge of the tools that they're working, and now move them forward so they can actually be more effective in industry. The two approaches we use here are two different forms of training, and I'll talk about these a little bit later on, is both e-learning and then also live classes. Now we can imagine a graduate who's come bright and cheerful out of university, and I can remember my early days there some time back now, and then you move into the job. And that's when life really hits you hard, in the sense that a lot of the techniques you used, theoretical knowledge you used at college is very valuable, perhaps is used straight away. Some of it perhaps you're thinking, why do we need to learn this? Other bits you're thinking, well, I wish I had learnt about that. But what NAFEM's role here is to basically build on that. So we want to be teaching people about all the real world issues. So how do you actually set up analysis faced with the actual project task? You've got real geometry, you've got real requirements, you've got to fit into this overall industrial scene now. And that's somewhat different from the theoretical background you might have had, and even the project work you might have had, say, at university. So it's, if you like, how to survive in the real world of the job. There's a lot going to hit you. I know I was completely overwhelmed. So we're going to be talking about, for example, things such as how to plan an analysis, how to bring together the resource that, or assess the resource you have, assess the scope of the analysis, what kind of analysis are you trying to achieve, what is the objective of the analysis, and then what traps are possibly out there for you. What error checking do we need to do? How we can be perhaps misled by the results coming from the analysis, and also how can we end up with a well-rounded, thoroughly verified type of analysis that goes out the door. So it's not so much going down into, say, the theory of Jacobian matrices. We touch on those very briefly, but only in the context of understanding and getting some common ground where the topics we're talking about, but then talking about those in context. For example, with Jacobian, it's just a very useful metric to use to look at the actual warping and distortion of an element in a preprocess, for example. We don't necessarily have to know all the background theory behind it. Another area we can get involved with is where things are changing quite rapidly in the modern world. So people will have perhaps a traditional role or task they've been doing, and now there's a requirement to change tack, and maybe there's a new role or new task. One example here is the role of a test engineer. Traditionally, test was somewhat divorced perhaps from analysis. We have the modern idea of verification and validation. It's becoming more of a science, and basically that's trying to integrate practical tests or physical tests with analysis work or analysis predictions. So there's to some extent a migration from the traditional testing role more to now to the integrated analyst test engineer. And to help that transition, we've done a lot of work with companies in a manner which is so the engineer is aware, eyes wide open, understands the kind of issues on both sides, on test and analysis. So I mentioned we had two different ways of actually delivering the courses, and the first one is the e-learning approach, and this is basically the chance here is to use a more measured pace. There's time to do homework and interact typically over like a 6 to 12 week period, when the course is considered to be live. There are no travel costs, it's all online, so the fees are lower. And this might well fit with your particular budget, your particular requirements. It's also very adaptable to your work schedule. You can join in the course at any time. We actually have people, we've got a course coming up very shortly, and people just joining right now, which is quite normal. And indeed, people can join sort of part way through the course. We can also have offline discussion. We find that many clients are blending this training in with other training or mentoring activities that they're building up in parallel. And that's a very interesting kind of approach. We're very proud. We've just come up to 200 courses just completed. Very shortly we'll go through EL 200, which is a bit of a landmark for us. And during that time, over the last 7 years or so, we've taught over 6,000 students. The format of the training, the e-learning training, is typically 2 to 3 hours per session. There can be between 3 and 5 sessions within a course. Halfway through the course, we have a break and we have a question and answer session. And then at the end of the course, we also have a question and answer session. The PDF notes are given to you. They're sent out prior to the training, and they're obviously yours to keep, to annotate, to work with as you wish. Each session is recorded, and that recording is available to stream for the duration of the course. And that duration of the course is anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks duration. So there's plenty of time to kind of bone up or review what is going on in that particular course. The forum is very important to us. Each class has its own unique forum. We upload their reading list, other materials such as Excel spreadsheets, MATLAB examples, and so on. And it's also where the attendees will lodge their homework responses. It also allows us to have more in-depth Q&A. If we've got into a topic which is a bit deeper to go into during the live session, we pass that over to this area where, again, the question can be more measured, it can be well presented, thought about. Again, it gives me and Cameron a chance to think about our response, and some of the answers can be quite extensive there. I also was in mentioning that the course extends 4 weeks beyond the last session. So we have a live session, say, spanning 5 weeks, then we will extend that course to 4 weeks beyond that, so that's 9 weeks total, before we will consider the course closed. If anybody's running out of time, if anybody's been stuck attending, then we will happily extend that. So in some ways, the courses are quite open-ended. Each course itself is a fresh course, so here's EL 188, that happened fairly recently, and each one is a fresh new course. So each training session is recorded live, different sets of students, different kind of questions. We want to generate that feeling it is a syndicate, it's a group over that period that we're working. If we look at the particular titles and sessions, then running through the different topics we have dynamics, basic dynamics, and we had advanced dynamics. You can see, for example, that's lasting 8 weeks in total. Composites, nonlinear analysis, optimization, fatigue and fracture mechanics, introduction to FEA, and then a very popular one, which is joints and connections within FEA. I teach these on the structural side. My colleague Cameron will teach the CFD classes, so Introduction to Practical CFD. CFD for Analysts and Designers, which is a very interesting course. So what Cameron is able to do there is set the scene for people that now need to use CFD. There's more and more people being able to use CFD. Results of CFD are more generally kind of in the overall process. So basically that course is to help people get a leg up in that kind of area. And then a more specialist topic he has there on turbulence modeling. I just mention also these courses here. That's obviously a wide range of technologies. We go to some depth in each of these, and this actually forms the backbone of the technology areas that we will actually offer up for when I talk about live training coming up very shortly. This is the background to a lot of the live training materials. So if you can think of all the topics in here, that's essentially what between us we're actually fielding within our range of training. Now, changing tack, if we talk about live training, this is now physical face-to-face training at your site, typically. The courses that we deliver there are highly customized. They're all about your products. They're about, if we can, using your models. We often sign an NDA agreement where we can take models, we can build them, we can run through some, perhaps not the full type of level of simulation, but at least give a context around the type of models that your engineers are working with. So if, for example, your business is working with powertrain, automotive powertrain, then we'll try and get models of that type. If you're working with heavy machinery, again, we'll try and get models of your particular area, so that your engineers are working with perhaps some of the fundamental principles, which you could use almost any model, but we like to use, if possible, these models in context. We find it will resonate with them much more if we're building and working in your particular scenario. It's also your identified technical areas. What areas do you need more resource, more knowledge in. It may be, for example, that you're pretty sound on basic FE analysis, nonlinear analysis, but now maybe you want to move into fatigue analysis, so you want to know some more background about that and how you approach that. Many people, for example, are now faced with perhaps dynamic analysis for the first time. Now vibration requirements become important. So again, working with you, we will help to identify what those areas are, explain what technologies we can bring, what knowledge we bring, and then we will develop essentially a menu of what your training requirements are. Again, what do you want to be doing with your engineers? Sometimes it's a core group of engineers who are going to become the experts. They're essentially going to become the trainers, or it might be that you want to have a very broad brush approach and very much of an overview to a large number of engineers. Whatever the requirements are, we'll work with you to help identify what they are and then actually fulfill those requirements. Essentially, often our starting point is picking from a complete technology list. So once we've made contact, we start talking, I or Cameron will interact with you and discover what these areas are, and we will again be filling in and explaining what our particular pick through that menu would be to suit your needs. The training courses, the live training courses, again, these are the on-site courses. They're highly interactive. All the time we're trying to develop a continuous ongoing Q&A. We want to develop shared experiences. So I and Cameron, we want to pass on our knowledge, our experience, the good news and the bad news, things to look out for, problems, checking, all these kind of things we've talked about. But also at the same time, looking for feedback from our clients into how do they use the technology? What are they trying to achieve? What are the key areas that you're trying to, for example, do analysis in? And sometimes that's not obvious. It actually kind of comes out a little bit more through conversation and development. Sometimes the courses actually become a kind of finding a route map, a roadmap forward for how we're going to tackle technology, and indeed what technologies do we need to approach. So the nature of the training classes can vary tremendously from client to client, and it makes it very interesting, a very exciting task to be involved with. We want to get into deeper dives, and again, this is the advantage of face-to-face training. If there's a sidebar develops and it becomes clear that's something that really is of concern and we need to spend more time on, then we can happily adapt the training on the fly, so we talk more about that. It may be that if there's time that evening, you might go away and do some investigation or some further research, but whatever it might be, we're going to try and move in that particular direction you need to go. We're also trying to build up scenarios, so we talk about situations that could be developing, different types of analysis, and we kind of talk through those scenarios, and indeed might get into like role playing. For example, here's a structure, these are requirements, how would you go about analyzing that? Sometimes we actually give deliberately canned poor reports that I bring along, and they're flawed in some way, so we ask people to actually take a good look at those, criticize those, and so on. Often we also work with developing a process map, which is basically saying, from everything we've learned, how are you going to put that into some kind of QA process, some kind of roadmap again for the company or the department to actually explore this area of technology. Not perhaps to replace anything which is there already in a formal kind of way, but to get some kind of a deeper engagement and a broader approach to why FEA and why simulation matters within an engineering company. So that's basically a quick summary of the kind of training we do. So the live training again is pretty well on demand. E-learning courses roll in just month in, month out. And if you want to get a feel for the current schedule, this is the website to go to. So it's our general NAFEMS website, nafems.org. There's an e-learning tab at the top there, and it'll take you down to the schedule, or you can go straight to this hyperlink here. If you're interested in the live classes, please do contact either myself or contact Andrew Wood, who's the Americas representative for NAFEMS. So we certainly look forward to hearing from you. Thanks very much for taking the time to watch this webinar, and good luck with all your simulation